What comes to mind when you think of Tennessee? The beautiful Smoky Mountains? The beloved Tennessee Volunteers? Nashville's famous music scene? Tennessee is many things, and it always has been. So, let's start from the beginning. Following the American Revolution, the western part of North Carolina attempted to separate and form the state of Franklin.
In 1779, Jonesboro becomes the oldest town in Tennessee. Jonesboro served as the capital of the state of Franklin until Greenville took that role. Franklin functioned as a 14th state until 1788, but it was never recognized by Congress.
Finally, on June 1st, 1796, President George Washington admitted Tennessee as the 16th state. And it all started in Jonesboro.
Located between the Watauga and Nolichucky rivers, this was a centrally located place. The purchase of land from the Cherokees enabled settlers, primarily of Scots-Irish descent, to enter into this hill country where farmland and pasture land was plentiful. Meanwhile, over-mountain men, fur traders, trappers, and hunters were able to enter into North America's interior through Tennessee and the numerous waterways therein, traveling as far away as New Orleans to facilitate a lucrative trade in furs and goods with the interior. The western frontier was here. It was Anglo-American settlers migrating into the interior. It was the Wild West. Although Jonesboro was intended as a planned community, the surrounding area was a little bit lawless. Land theft occurred, cattle rustling, horse stealing, as well as fistfights, cane fights, and duels occurred on this edge of the world for the young United States.
Meanwhile, 100 miles away, Knoxville was facing a similar problem while managing its growth.
You know, anytime that you live on the edge of civilization, which is really kind of what Knoxville was at that time, you know, there's dirt streets and, you know, it's hard to get mail, it's hard to get supplies. There's a lot of violence going on.
Because before it was Knoxville, it was White's Fort.
James White settles here in 1789, I believe, and builds a station, or a fort, essentially, that people would use when they were traveling.
And before the University of Tennessee, it was Blount College, named after William Blount, one of the 39 signers of the Constitution.
William Blount was born in 1749 in North Carolina, and he really is kind of the driving force behind the creation of the state of Tennessee. Goes on to be one of our first senators and gets himself into some trouble and ends up being the first and only U.S. senator to be impeached. The two main accomplishments that he had that are, you know, highly significant is him signing the Constitution for North Carolina and the creation of the state of Tennessee. You know, the Constitution and the state of Tennessee are two things that I would say even, you know, however many hundred years later, are still very much front of mind for a lot of people, even if they don't understand his role in either event.
But back in Jonesboro, the town was doing what it did best, making history.
So for about a decade, town merchants, doctors, politicians, and townsfolk had worked to bring the rail lines here to Jonesboro. The goal of these immortal 30, including famed surgeon Dr. Samuel Cunningham and merchant A.E. Jackson, was to allow the East Tennessee and Virginia Railroad Company to enter the region. They even mortgaged off their homes and their businesses just to personally fund this endeavor. And their gamble paid off. Dr. Cunningham drove the final spike into the rail line in 1858. And the railroad allowed for a building boom in Jonesboro. And following the Civil War, it facilitated industry, among which iron mining and the agricultural production of wheat en masse.
In December of 1969, the economy of Jonesboro changed, with the historical district being added to the National Register of Historic Places.
The community recognized that its role was to preserve that history that it had built, and they needed to pivot in this new role, to build a town based in tourism and travel. The goal was that where once the railway had provided commerce, now the highway does, as visitors travel in the thousands to see Tennessee's oldest town and to hear our stories.
And with Jonesboro's new role, too, came its most important objective, preservation. Not just the tangible, but the cultural, too.
We are right here in the Chester Inn, here in Jonesboro. This is the oldest building in the commercial district of Jonesboro. It's one of the oldest buildings in the state, and it is here in Tennessee's oldest town. So we have every formula for difficulty when it comes to preservation. In the community, we do have a good resource with the archives, through the Heritage Alliance, with the Historic Zoning Commission. There are a lot of resources around to help with preservation. We run a salvage warehouse that helps with preservation as well, so that when buildings are dismantled or things are taken out of buildings that are historic, we can preserve those architectural details for use in a future building as well as their history. With a site like the Chester Inn, which is a state-owned historic site, there are a lot more hoops to jump through. We have to work with vetted contractors. There are approved people that can help restore buildings and help preserve buildings, and we have to work very closely with those. There's an archaeological aspect, and then of course budget. Old buildings are so expensive, and it's a labor of love, but every day it's something. And I think that having more funding, grants and things, that would definitely make things easier. Having more people dedicated to that would make things easier, more people invested in preservation.
But old buildings don't just fall to time. They fall to disaster, too.
Following Hurricane Helene, we started reaching out trying to see if there was any way that we could help lightly conserve and preserve photographs, family albums, documents, things like that from people that have been either displaced or have had water damage, flood damage, and then also working with people who are now rapidly trying to restore their damaged homes. And a lot of the ones that were damaged are ones that have historic qualities that need to be preserved. Some of those no longer exist, especially here on the Tennessee side with the Nolichucky, and a lot of our sort of bridges and infrastructure was damaged in this, so making sure that right away everybody had access to water, food, shelter, all of that kind of thing, and then immediately trying to put back in roads, that has taken precedence over the preservation aspect of things, although that is happening alongside also. On the western North Carolina side, and also sort of within Washington County itself and further out along the river system, there are full communities which have been completely wiped out, essentially. So what is the heart of a community and how can you preserve that first beyond just buildings and things? That's gonna be an ongoing many years project. Jonesboro, the town, was very well spared. In the 80s, they put in a great water mitigation system here in Jonesboro to help direct any floodwaters away from the historic buildings. And that's amazing. Not every place has that. And so going back in and seeing, just seeing the devastation has been really difficult. But also, I don't think I've ever been more proud to be East Tennessean than I have been following Helene. The togetherness that we have experienced, neighbors helping neighbors, strangers helping strangers. It's been really incredible. Yeah. I think the very most important thing to know about Jonesboro history is that it's still happening. Around the world, people think, they hear your accent. Where are you from? From Tennessee. And they say, Dolly Parton. I say, yeah, of course. Of course I do. Yes, Dolly Parton. NASCAR. Yeah, that too. All of it, yes. But we're so much more than that.
From Jonesboro to Morristown to Knoxville, one thing remains true. East Tennesseans love their home.
This is all I've ever known, so I mean, this is home to me, so I really can't imagine living anyplace else.
I'm so glad I grew up here. I'm so glad I've gotten to live here my whole life so far, and this is probably where I'll always live, and that is fine with me.
And people always ask me this, like, would you ever move from Tennessee? And it's like, I could for like a year, and I think that I would always come back because, I mean, like, where else are you gonna go? Like, where else is this cool?
I know that that's a big part of what makes this place special, is that either people leave and they decide that the rest of the world wasn't any better than this and they want to come back, or they come here and bring something new, or they decide to stay here because this is a valuable place to work and live.
I can't even count like how many people have told me that their families moved or like just came here for a vacation and then just decided to move here because of just how pretty it was and how like welcoming everybody was, which I'm really proud of.
From what it looked like when I moved in 2011 to what it looks like now, there's just been a whole lot of change in a short amount of time. Most of it for the better.
It's definitely more diverse in both culture and just like type of people and ages.
I guess Knoxville's just gotten more populated, more apartments, more housing complexes. It seems like the infrastructure, the roads and things are behind the growth.
On the one hand, I love it because more people get to enjoy more things, and I get to meet more diverse people and people like different experiences and things for me. But on the other hand, I'm also like, why am I stuck in traffic for 20 minutes to get out of my house?
Even Knoxville, as sprawled out a city as it is, you can get off a main road and you are in gorgeous countryside.
I love that when we look outside the window and we see these mountains, they are so much older than anything else. It's ancient, older than any other mountains on this continent, some of the oldest mountains in the world, and they will be here long after us.
The mountains instantly come to mind.
Pigeon Forge and, obviously Dollywood, the commercial part of it, but I appreciate more the natural part of it, the hiking and the camping and things.
I think we do connect a lot with the land. So when you can smell it and touch it and feel it and see it and be one with the reason people came here in the first place.
Knoxville just got something that other places don't, and sometimes it's hard to put your finger on it, but it's a good place to live, it really is.
People talk about, this is where I'm from, this is my land, this is where my people are buried. That shapes who we think we are. And so I think that still plays into what we're doing also, and into things like documentaries being made about East Tennessee. That's something that's inherent in people, that interest, and that sort of dedication to our region.